The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one with the most power. It's the one who appears to have it. There's a truth most people never grasp. Reality doesn't govern human behavior. Perception does. The war isn't fought over what is. It's fought over what people believe is. And in that gap, between truth and perception, that's where power lives. Think about it. How many incompetent leaders have you seen command respect? How many brilliant minds have you watched get ignored? The difference wasn't capability, it was perception. The power of perception, the invisible law that determines who rises and who falls, who's trusted and who's dismissed, who commands respect and who begs for it. Most people think power comes from competence, intelligence, hard work. And while those matter, they don't decide your position in the hierarchy. What decides it is how others perceive you, whether you're seen as weak or formidable, uncertains or assured, ordinaries or exceptional. Two people can possess identical skills, identical achievements, but the one who controls perception claims 10 times the influence. This isn't about deception. It's about understanding the rules of the game you're already playing. Every interaction is a negotiation of perception. Every conversation, every email, every entrance into a room, you're either building an image intentionally or letting others build it for you. And that second option is dangerous. Let's begin with the mechanism behind this phenomenon. Humans don't process reality directly. We process it through filters, cognitive shortcuts our brains use to conserve mental energy. One of the most powerful is called the halo effect. When someone appears competent in one area, we unconsciously assume competence across all areas. A well-dressed person is presumed intelligent. A confident speaker is presumed knowledgeable. An attractive face is presumed trustworthy. We judge the book by its cover. Then we reverse engineer logic to defend that judgment. There's also social proof. We look to others to determine value. If a room full of people treats someone with deference, you'll unconsciously do the same. Not because you've evaluated them independently, but because the crowd has already made the evaluation for you. Your brain assumes, if everyone else respects this person, there must be a reason. And just like that, perception multiplies. Here's a simple example from the corporate world. Two candidates interview for the same leadership position. One arrives precisely on time, dressed impeccably, speaking with measured confidence, never rushing, never apologizing. The other arrives 5 minutes early, dressed casually but professionally, equally qualified but apologetic in tone, filling silence with nervous explanations. The first controls the frame, the second submits to it. Guess who gets the offer? It's not about who's more qualified, it's about who appeared more qualified in the 30 seconds before either one spoke. The principle? People believe what they see before they verify what's true, and by the time they think to verify, the perception has already hardened into fact. Machiavelli understood this dynamic 5 centuries ago. In The Prince, he writes, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel." Let me translate. Everyone observes your surface. Few will ever know your substance. So the surface must be cultivated with the same rigor you'd apply to any strategic asset. He wasn't advocating dishonesty for its own sake. He was identifying a cold structural reality, that leadership, influence, and authority are granted not to those who deserve them in some objective sense, but to those who appear to deserve them in the eyes of others. A prince might be cruel in private, but if he appears merciful in his public actions, the people will call him merciful. A prince might be weak in character, but if he projects strength through symbols, ceremony, and calculated displays of power, he'll be feared and respected. Machiavelli's insight was fundamentally tactical. You must manage not just your actions, but the interpretation of your actions. Because the interpretation, the story people tell themselves about you, is what determines your power, your influence, your survival. He observed that rulers who ignored perception fell quickly. Those who mastered it endured for generations. The difference wasn't moral virtue, it was strategic clarity. This isn't cynicism, it's realism. And realism, when applied intelligently, is the foundation of all lasting power. Consider Julius Caesar at the Rubicon River. When Caesar crossed that river with his army, it wasn't just a military maneuver, it was theater. He understood that this moment would be remembered, retold, mythologized for millennia. So he staged it deliberately. The hesitation at the riverbank, the consultation with his officers, the legendary phrase, alea jacta est, the die is cast. These weren't spontaneous reactions. They were calculated performances designed to shape how history would perceive his choice, not as treason but as fate, not as naked ambition but as destiny answering a call. Perception made him eternal. Reality made him mortal. He chose perception. Now fast forward 2,000 years to Steve Jobs. Jobs didn't just create products, he created an image of innovation that transcended the products themselves. The black turtleneck wasn't a fashion choice, it was a uniform, a symbol of singular focus. The staged product reveals, those weren't press conferences, they were secular sermons. The carefully rehearsed spontaneity, the pauses, the understatement, all designed to create a feeling. He understood that Apple's value wasn't just in the technology, it was in the perception people had when they thought about Apple. Exclusivity, elegance, rebellion against the mundane, simplicity as sophistication. He controlled the narrative so tightly that owning an Apple product became an identity statement. The reality, Apple used many of the same components as competitors. The software had bugs. The price points were often unjustifiable by spec comparisons alone. But perception dictated a different truth, and that truth shaped a trillion-dollar empire. The pattern across history is clear. Those who shape perception shape reality itself. Now let's bring this principle into your immediate world. Look around. This law is operating everywhere, every day, in every social structure you inhabit. The colleague in your office who speaks last in meetings, not necessarily because they have the best ideas, but because they've learned, consciously or unconsciously, that timing creates the illusion of authority. When you speak first, you're just another voice. When you speak last, after everyone else has revealed their position, you appear to be synthesizing, concluding, deciding. You're perceived as the one with judgment. Look at the entrepreneur whose Instagram feed shows only victories, never setbacks, cultivating an image of effortless success that attracts investors, clients, and followers. The perception of momentum creates actual momentum. People want to be associated with winners, so they make that person a winner through their association. On social media platforms, perception isn't just part of the product, it is the entire product. Influencers don't sell expertise, they sell the appearance of a desirable life. Politicians don't win elections on policy depth alone, they win on projected confidence, relatability, strength. The candidate who looks presidential, who sounds presidential, becomes presidential in the voter's mind before a single policy is evaluated. Even in intimate relationships, perception governs the dynamics. The person who remains slightly mysterious, who doesn't over-explain themselves or over-pursue, is automatically perceived as higher value. Scarcity creates intrigue. Availability diminishes it. It's not fair, but it's consistent. Here's the core pattern to recognize in all these situations. Whoever controls the frame controls the interaction. The CEO who walks into a boardroom last, forcing everyone to wait. The negotiator who speaks less but with surgical precision. The artist who reveals almost nothing about their creative process. These people aren't necessarily more talented than their peers. They're more strategic about how they're perceived. Start watching for it. Once you see this pattern, you'll recognize it in every power structure you encounter. So how do you apply this principle with intelligence and intent? First, curate your signals deliberately. Everything you display, your appearance, your physical environment, your response time to messages, your tone in communication, sends a signal about your status and competence. The only question is whether that signal is accidental or designed. If you want to be perceived as competent, remove visible signs of chaos from your space and your schedule. If you want to be perceived as confident, eliminate apologetic language from your vocabulary. Small, consistent adjustments in how you present yourself create large shifts in how others perceive and respond to you. Second, control your visibility and availability. Scarcity increases perceived value in every domain. Don't be endlessly available. Don't over-explain your decisions or justify your choices to people who haven't earned that explanation. When you speak less, but with precision, your words carry exponentially more weight. When you're selective about where you appear and who gets your time, your presence becomes an event rather than an expectation. This isn't about arrogance. It's about understanding that humans value what's rare and dismiss what's abundant. Third, master strategic association. You are judged by proximity, whether you like it or not. Align yourself with high-status people, prestigious projects, and respected ideas, not through desperate social climbing, but through genuine value exchange. The halo effect works in both directions. Align yourself with excellence and you're perceived as excellent. Align yourself with mediocrity, and you'll be perceived as mediocre regardless of your actual capability. Choose your associations with the same care you'd choose an investment. Fourth, shape the narrative before others shape it for you. If you don't define yourself, someone else will, and their definition will serve their interests, not yours. Frame your actions intentionally. Control the story around your decisions. If you made a bold move, name it as bold. If you took a calculated risk, own it publicly. The first interpretation of an event often becomes the dominant interpretation, so make sure that first interpretation comes from you. Fifth, understand the power of silence and restraint. The person who reacts to everything is perceived as weak. The person who remains composed under pressure is perceived as powerful. Train yourself to pause before responding. Master the strategic non-response. Not everything deserves your energy, and selective engagement signals that you operate from a position of abundance, not scarcity. A critical word of caution here. This isn't about deception or building false facades. That's an amateur's strategy that collapses under scrutiny. Strategic perception is about aligning your surface with your substance so that the truth is seen clearly, not obscured. Lying creates fragile illusions. Intentional presentation creates durable influence. Let's return to where we began. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one with the most power. It's the one who appears to have it. Because in human systems, in organizations, in relationships, in markets, in societies, perception doesn't just influence power. Perception becomes power. The person who's perceived as the leader eventually is the leader, regardless of title. The person who's perceived as valuable becomes valuable, regardless of objective metrics. Perception shapes opportunity, and opportunity shapes reality. Machiavelli, Caesar, Jobs, they understood something most people spend their entire lives resisting. You can be brilliant and overlooked, or average and elevated. The difference isn't always merit. It's how merit is perceived. So here's the question you should sit with tonight. Who's shaping your perception right now? And more importantly, are you letting them? Because if you're not actively managing how the world sees you, I promise you someone else is doing it for you. And I can guarantee their version won't serve your ambitions. Power doesn't flow to the most qualified. It flows to those who make their qualification visible, undeniable, memorable. If this lesson shifted something in how you see the game, understand that there are more hidden laws waiting to be revealed, more uncomfortable truths, more strategic principles that separate those who understand power from those who wonder why it always seems to elude them. The game is already being played. The only question is whether you're playing it consciously or being played. The choice, as always, is yours.